That's a pretty good song for this upcoming segment. Brandon Bowes is our musical director. And by the way, our producer is Laura Starr. On the live line, we have Martin Brooker. He's with KGO Software, and he has found that if you're showing up to a workplace, you're soon to be in the minority. Hey, Martin, thanks a lot for joining us.
Hi, Michael. How you doing? Good afternoon.
Hey, explain what KGO does. I find this fascinating that there's a space for you in the world.
Yeah, so we schedule workspaces, right? So typically conference rooms and desks. So organisations that are looking to understand how their spaces are being utilised are looking to schedule ahead of time. Also, be able to take advantage of that space, right? So the traditional method of booking a conference room is probably through Microsoft Exchange or some similar calendar tool, and for most organisations, they need a bit more sophistication. So that's what we do. And we do it for very large corporations around the world. So
I find this interesting because a good friend of mine moved out here from the Midwest. This was even years ago. And he never went to the office except for when his boss called a meeting. And so one time, and the boss wasn't from here. And so everybody was the same way. So they all show up, they put on their suit, they wander in, and they had a whole floor, and they got a new boss, and he walked through, and he noticed that there wasn't a personal belonging anywhere. And he said, does anybody ever actually work here? And everybody's like, no. So they had a whole expensive floor in a high rise in San Francisco that was just empty all day, waiting for a meeting on Monday morning. And that's what you guys are scheduling, right, to get rid of that space.
Yeah, I think that a lot of organisations allowed their workers that flexibility, right, to work from home, work from the coffee shop. Obviously, with the internet, you can really collaborate anywhere, right? But I think that a lot of organisations are realising they're losing something. They're losing that sense of purpose, the sense of actually working for a company. They're missing the water cooler conversations on a Monday morning, and actually, collaborating in person is still something that a lot of, especially the younger generation, crave for. So a lot of us maybe of a certain age like the flexibility of being able to work from home. Maybe some of the younger folks actually quite like the fact of coming into an office and using the space, right, and being part of a company.
Oh, absolutely. I took law school classes online, part of my process, and I always thought, for me, it worked great. For young people, I thought, boy, this would be a drag. I'd rather, if I was younger, I'd rather be there. So you guys just put together a study, and what you're finding is flex time and remote working is the new normal, right?
Yes. Yeah, we did a study of globally of 750 sort of C-suite execs across a multitude of companies and territories or countries across the world. And yeah, I mean, I think I think obviously we're challenged here in the States across the globe with almost full employment. So organisations are struggling to find talent, and they're trying to give their workforce as much flexibility as possible. So I think the new norm is 3 days in the office, 2 days remote, and in some cases, especially in the Bay Area with the traffic that we have, it's becoming more and more easy to work from home, especially with video conferencing and other collaboration technologies widely available. Right, you don't need to necessarily meet in person.
Well, all the studies I've seen is worker productivity goes up if they don't show up in an office. Is that what is still out there? Those are the last numbers I've seen.
I think so. I mean, I think that obviously, if you're spending an hour and a half in the car every day getting to work, you're burning 3 hours of your life, which is particularly unproductive. I mean, we've seen in the Bay Area especially, obviously, organisations laying on transportation with Wi-Fi on the buses and other things to keep that productivity, right? So if you're coming into the office, they're laying on free transportation and free Wi-Fi on the bus and even free breakfast in some cases, right? So
all the big
why drive?
So who's doing this? What I see when I'm wandering around in my life and interviewing people is that The newer tech companies are actually doing this. The older line corporate America pretends like they're doing it, but they really they want the control. They can't think like this.
I think that's very true, Michael. I think, what's interesting about the study, I think that everybody's faced with the same challenge, right? Is that, it starts with retaining talent. It's how do I make effective use of the space? I may be committed to long-term leases in expensive rent areas, right? So obviously we're seeing WeWork and other organisations pop up, giving more flexibility. But I still think that personally, I still like to go into the office. I still like to be part of the team and collaborate actually in person. I think, yes, productivity, it's useful to be able to, connect anywhere in the world over a video call, but certainly running my business day to day, I still want to see the people, right?
So what percentage of time are people spending in the office now as opposed to,
Yeah, I think the average. I think this study said that the norm across a multitude of countries was 3 days in the office and 2 days remote. I think in the Bay Area maybe that's even higher, right? Working remote, but certainly, globally and again different trends, different organisations in Central Europe, in Germany and France, it's quite the norm still to go into the office. In Australia, as an example, Singapore, it's still the norm to come into the office, right? In London, in the major metropolitan areas in the US, I think people are getting used to that flexibility, right?
Yeah. I mean, it really seems. I think most of my, I work in a newsroom, so everybody shows up to a newsroom. But in all other businesses, I think my friends are about half and half. I don't think they show up half the days. I think they just go directly to work.
Well, it's interesting. I was in Atlanta on Wednesday. We're meeting a client, and they had I think 4 or 5 buildings across metropolitan Atlanta, and met the head of corporate real estate. And his edict from the CEO of this organisation was to get people to come back to the office because they didn't feel that they were losing their culture. They were losing the sense of belonging, right? And even if people were collaborating, day in, day out on the telephone or other communication or other collaboration technologies, there was a driver for this particular organisation to try to encourage people to come back to the office, right? So create environments that people want to come into. I mean, you've seen with, the Apples and the Googles of the world here in the Bay Area creating these fabulous environments where almost they don't want you to go home, right?
Well, I know when you talk to startups, guys that are running and actually starting the startups, they'll say their biggest job is to make sure their people don't go out to lunch. That's why they bring them lunch. Because if they go out to lunch, they're going to meet somebody and get hired by them.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
And so they want to feed them a lunch, and they want to give them a culture they enjoy. Like you said, they want to show up. It's a space that they like.
Yes, I think what we're seeing is the need to understand where people go to, right? Companies are spending more and more money on these environments, but they're struggling to understand, where people go. So you might badge into a building, but where do you go? Where do you gravitate to? If you're a flexible worker, do you have a desk? Do you have a flexible desk? Do you sit in a cube? Do you sit in an open space? So I think these are key trends we're seeing where if I want to sit in an open space or I want flexibility, I'm not normally based in the San Francisco office, but I'm flying in from New York. I want a place to work this week. I want to be able to schedule ahead of time to know that I'm actually going to get a boarding pass. I'm actually going to get somewhere to sit for the week.
Yeah, but what I've heard is that the open seating is now beginning to go away. People are getting tired of it, and they're not getting as much work done, and it's just a hassle. And it's one of those. It works when you're a startup and you're 26. After that, people are kind of getting tired of it.
I think you're right. I think that's the challenge, again, going back to workspaces, is open space is great. It potentially enhances collaboration. But there are times when we all need to find time to have a private phone call, right? Or we need to do something, quietly, right? So, the fact that we've actually got everybody out of having their own corner office and replaced it with open spaces. The biggest challenge now is where do those people go to have a quiet conversation or a private conversation?
Yeah, it's to the point, and some of the big open workplaces where if a colleague is called into a meeting, it's like, uh-oh. If it wasn't trouble, you could just say it out of here. Yeah. Martin Brooker, he's with Condico Software. Martin, thanks a lot for your time. I appreciate it.
Hey, no, good to talk to you. Thanks, Michael. All the best.
When we come back, what happens after Amazon's domination is complete?